Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. It's been said, and I'm paraphrasing, there's nothing more American than apple pie in baseball. And while I'm sure there are other things you can think of to add to the list, there's one more that I'll put on there. And I can assure you, you're not thinking of this one at all. Because it seems like every town in the United States has a crybaby bridge, or some variation of it. Local folklore and urban legends make it nearly impossible to determine the number of these bridges across the country. But I conducted my own informal research and asked about 24 people, many of whom grew up in different states, and all of them confirmed they had a crybaby bridge either in their town or a neighboring one. And I'd bet if you asked some of the folks around you, they'd likely recall one as well. The story itself is harrowing and tragic, and frankly sensitive, so I'll offer a content warning as we get started. This episode contains graphic descriptions of murder, suicide, and infanticide. Listener discretion is advised. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore the scary phenomenon known as Crybaby Bridge. Can you really hear a baby crying while parked atop a bridge at midnight? Or is it nothing more than a scary urban legend? I'll share the story. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. It's close to midnight as your sweaty palms grip the handle of the car door. You look around, wondering if something evil is lurking from the dark. A chill shoots down your back as a cool breeze sweeps in from seemingly nowhere. Under the moonlight, the trees cast eerie shadows, tricking your eyes into thinking someone is watching you. For a moment, you wonder if it's better to go back inside, but you fight through your fear and get in the car. A few days earlier, while sitting at a restaurant, you overheard a conversation about a haunted bridge in your town. At first you dismissed it offhand, but it took a few seconds for you to admit your interest was piqued, and that you were unconsciously leaning in to hear more. You struggled to listen, as the noise around you seemed amplified, but what you heard was unmistakable. Crybaby Bridge. Supposedly haunted. Maybe it's bullshit, but I don't know if I want to find out. Collier's Lane. You had just enough information to do a quick Google search, but to your frustration, you couldn't find anything about a crybaby bridge on Collier's Lane. Not exactly a great start. What you do find, though, is dozens of articles about these bridges in other parts of the country. In fact, it seems like the internet is flooded with stories from people who experienced sheer terror while on a crybaby bridge. But what is it? You dig deeper, and the answer both intrigues and scares the shit out of you. So now here you are, driving by yourself to a bridge in the middle of nowhere. Your GPS is blurry as phone service cuts in and out. As you slow down, hoping the GPS will finally refresh, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. A sign for Collier's Lane just up ahead. The rocks crunch as the paved road turns to gravel, and within a few short seconds, you see the rusty trellises for Crybaby Bridge. You start to freeze, trying to convince yourself to turn back. Nevertheless, the car inches towards the bridge, and your mind begins to wander to the worst-case scenario. No one's going to save you if something bad happens. You steal a glance at the clock. 2 minutes to midnight. The story of Crybaby Bridge settles in, and you close your eyes, hoping and praying it's just imagination. Before you realize it, you're standing outside the car, which is now off. When did I do that? You think to yourself. You hear the door slam, and for the first time, the reality of the situation settles in. The bridge is completely isolated, with thick woods surrounding it. There's nowhere to run if something jumps out at you. You glance down at your watch one more time. It's midnight. The sound of the forest, the crickets chirping, cicadas buzzing, and owls hooting, is strangely gone, and it's as if the woods have suddenly been shut off. A few seconds pass, then a few more. Nothing. You breathe a sigh of relief, almost embarrassed that you'd scared yourself for nothing. At least it's just me. You're facing the car door when you hear it. Soft giggling, almost as if carried by the wind to your ears before fading entirely. I really need to get some sleep. This time, it's unmistakable. What the f... Suddenly the sound changes. It's no longer a baby giggling, but a... You look up just in time to see a figure walking in your direction. You try to scream, but fear and terror snatch the sound before you make it. You're frozen in place as the ghostly figure reaches for your neck. You're staring horror right between the eyes. In the simplest sense, this is the story of Crybaby Bridge. Of course, details may vary from town to town, but by and large, the story goes that a woman lived in a small community near an old bridge crossing over a small creek. Some say she was an unwed mother. Others say the baby's father was killed in a tragic accident. Either way, after the child was born, the woman hid it for weeks, ashamed. Night after night, neighbors claimed to hear the baby crying. And then one night, it just stopped. A few days later, the woman was found wandering the road near the bridge. She repeated the same phrase, "I tried to make it stop crying." Investigators quickly discerned she had a child and began a frantic search for the missing baby. Some say the baby's body was recovered near the creek bed. Others say they found a noose dangling over the side of the bridge, with no baby in sight. And still others say no evidence was ever found, that the baby simply vanished into thin air. Sometime later, a driver crossing the bridge at midnight reported his car stalled in the middle, and when he got out to check, he heard something terrifying coming from underneath the bridge, a baby giggling. Thinking it was an animal, he shrugged it off and tried to restart his car. At first, nothing happened, but after a few turns, the engine roared to life and he went about his business. Soon enough, though, more reports came in about motorists being stranded in the middle of the bridge at midnight. Sometimes their radios would turn staticky. Other times, a sudden fog would rise from the creek bed. In every case, they heard a baby giggling followed by the unmistakable sound of a rope swinging. In the scariest cases, many claimed to see a ghostly figure in the distance, walking towards them, whispering under her breath. We'll continue right after this quick ad break. I've said this before, but every urban legend has its own set of stories and scary experiences. And I've got two for you, including one of my own. Story 1. Many years ago, my boyfriend and I drove out to visit the Joplin Spooklight. We were teenagers. It was summer, and it was very dark, and I have no idea if we were in the actual Spooklight spot. I know that's where we were going, and that's where my boyfriend said we were when we got there. I remember we parked on the side of a deserted road, looked around for weird lights for a few minutes, and then started making out. With the radio playing and the window steamed up, we had paused for air when we noticed a bobbing light at the end of the road. I don't remember the exact time, but it had to have been after midnight. We watched the light for a minute. It was a bright white-blue light at the end of the road and looked like a headlight. We wondered out loud, is that a car? A motorcycle? A cop? The light sort of bobbed up and down until it was about 100 yards away from the front of the car, when it suddenly shot forward toward us and seemed to change color to more of a blue-green as it flew over the hood and above the car. "Well, that's enough of you," said my boyfriend. He put the car in drive while I straightened my clothes and we left for home. The second story is my son's story. He and his girlfriend and another couple decided to try out Crybaby Hollow near Crocker, Missouri one night. Crybaby Hollow is one of those places where you park on a dark road on a narrow bridge and wait for the creepy things to happen. Specifically, people report seeing glowing eyes, hearing a crying baby, and finding handprints or scratches on their car when they leave. If they leave. Often, cars refuse to start after parking at Crybaby Hollow. My son tells me they turned off the car and waited in the dark for a while. Eventually, my son, the driver, saw glowing red eyes in the rearview mirror. When they turned around to look out the back window, no eyes could be seen in the dark. But when they turned back around and looked in the mirror, the eyes were back. They heard strange noises like things moving through the trees. Large things, not small critters, but some large animals snapping twigs and rustling through the brush. First on one side of the car, and then the other. His girlfriend, lovely girl, we are still friends, heard a sound outside the car that sounded like a baby crying. They rolled down the front windows, and all heard the sound of a baby crying in the dark. By this time, they were getting pretty scared and decided to leave. But the car would not turn over. A few frantic turns of the key later, they were good and scared, but on their way home. When they arrived, my son noticed long, uneven scratches in the paint on either side of the car that had not been present before that night. My son has told this story many times, and he swears still that he will not go back to Crybaby Hollow. Story 2. This second story is my own. By the time I was in my middle teen years, our family had moved from Brooklyn to a suburb in New Jersey. We traded the concrete jungle for lawns and pools and ghost hunting. I think it was the summer going into my senior year in high school when a friend mentioned something called Kill Yourself Bridge. I had never heard of it and had no idea what it was, but I was super intrigued. According to local legend, a woman had killed her child on the bridge and then hung herself soon after. I didn't realize it at the time, but Kill Yourself Bridge was a variation of Crybaby Bridge. In fact, comparing the details between my experience and others, it was almost identical. Except for one major thing. Of course, the first time we went out there, it was me and one or two other friends. We'd hyped ourselves up ahead of time, talking about hearing rope swinging and cries in the night. But by the time we pulled onto the bridge at 11:55 p.m., the car was dead silent, and the excitement had been replaced by anxiety. The bridge was tucked away in a service road that was incredibly difficult to get to, or to get out of, if there was an emergency. At 12 a.m., we did all the normal things. We turned the car off, rolled down the windows, and listened. We spent a few minutes but didn't hear anything, so we left. We went back a few more times after that, and each time it was the same thing. Nothing happened. One night though, I got a call. This was back when text messaging cost money, so we actually made phone calls to talk to people. I got this call from a friend who wanted to go back to the bridge, this time with a Ouija board. I wasn't super thrilled with the idea, but also didn't want to be a stick in the mud, so we went back to the bridge with a Ouija board in hand. At some point, one of our friends slipped away, presumably to make a phone call. Within a few minutes, and while this person was not in the group, a few others broke out the Ouija board and tried to communicate with anything that might be around the bridge. A few minutes of nothing, and then it spelled out P-E-E-I-N-G. Peeing. Now, I wasn't playing with the Ouija board. I've never actually used one before, but I was standing at what I thought was a safe distance away from the group, but still close enough to see what was going on. After getting the message, we laughed and joked with each other, fully assuming someone in the group was fucking around. But one by one, they denied moving the planchette and insisted that someone else was moving it. They tried it again, and this time it spelled S-T-O-P-P-E-E-I-N-G. Stop peeing. A little freaked out at this point, we ended the session and all prepped to get in the car and call it a night. The nervous energy was palpable at that point, and it was obvious that we were all shitting our pants. After piling into the car, one of our friends said, "Hey, where's Jake?" That's not his real name, by the way. A few seconds later, Jake comes running out of the woods, cursing at the group because he thought we were going to leave him behind. And we were, but not on purpose. He hops in the car, and we ask him where he was the entire time they were playing with the Ouija board. He says casually, completely unaware of anything that had happened, "I went to make a phone call to this girl, and then I had to pee. But when I saw you guys start the car, I had to stop peeing so you wouldn't leave me." Naturally, everyone in the car started talking all at once. Did Jake know what the board had said? Did someone in the car and Jake plan this together to scare the rest of us? We had question upon question upon question, and had no answers. It's been almost 25 years since that night. We never went back to Kill Yourself Bridge after that, though we did find other local haunts to explore. And we never figured out what happened with Jake and the message from the Ouija board. If it wasn't anyone in our group, then who, or what, was it? The lore surrounding Crybaby Bridge is tragic for multiple reasons. First, the story itself. A distraught mother killing her child before taking her own life, or wandering aimlessly in guilt, is truly nightmarish. The sad truth is that stories like this have played out in real life. Maybe not in the exact way as Crybaby Bridge, but similar. The most emotionally difficult documentary I've ever seen is Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father. While researching for and writing this episode, the tragedy of Andrew Bagby and Zachary Turner was at the forefront of my thinking. If you've never seen it, I won't tell you anything else, but just know that if you do decide to watch it, it's incredibly tough and is likely to stir up different emotions. The second tragedy is found in the meaning behind the legend. At the surface, it's a cautionary tale, like many other urban legends, of the dangers of premarital sex, unwed motherhood, and avoiding social scandal. We've explored other real-life stories like this before. Red Treehouse episode 198, The Red Barn Murder, for example, where premarital sex and having children out of wedlock is deemed socially unacceptable, and the woman/mother unjustly bears the full burden of responsibility, often to tragic ends. And of course, there is something absent in these stories: accountability for the man or men involved. A woman exercising her right to have sex and bear children, regardless of marital status, are neither scandalous nor condemnable. Societal and cultural pressure, unfairly applied, declares this to be the case. But really, there is nothing inherently wrong with either. And yet, as is often the case, overwhelmingly so, women bear the brunt end of society's ire, when the truly condemnable part is the neglect and absence of men who would prefer to use women for their selfish ends and leave them as if they don't exist. It's all too common for men to dehumanize women by treating them as commodities who are useful only so far as they serve their purpose. And once that purpose is served, men all too frequently discard women as if they are worthless. I fear the more things change, the more they stay the same. Tragically so. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're left with these lingering questions. Is Crybaby Bridge a real-life phenomenon? And would you try it, if given the opportunity? I've shared the story. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.